Rolling.
Welcome into another episode of the Catch the Sky podcast. I am your host, Sweet Tea, and this week I will be answering questions from the comments section of our viral Uber video, as well as taking on the Supreme Court by myself. Dick Francisco is still on siesta this week, so it's just me. I appreciate you tuning in. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts by searching for the Catch the Sky podcast. That includes YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. You can find me on Twitter at CTS Terry. And be sure to hit that like or subscribe button wherever you listen. So, people have been asking what's going on in this video. So, I decided I would provide a more accurate timeline of exactly what happened. So I arrived at the location. The woman depicted in the video came down from the home and grabbed her mail on the way to the car. She proceeded to put the car seat and her child into the car, did not buckle her child in. And then she decided that something in the mail was something she wanted to leave at the house. So she actually called for her mom prior to the video in order for her to come get some mail. And it was at this point, while she met her mother at the door, that the child who was not buckled in began to wipe his feet on the back of the seat and asked him once nicely, "Hey, buddy, can you please not wipe your feet on my seat?" And then he stood up and proceeded to do it as the mother was getting in the car. And at this point, I was like, "Can we not be wiping the feet on the seat?" And she goes, "All right, well, don't redirect my child. I'm the only one that will redirect my child." And I said, "Well, can you redirect him to not wipe his feet on the seat?" And she started to get very upset. And at this point, her child grabbed my phone. And that's when I said, "Okay, things aren't working out. I'm not going to be able to take you today. You're going to have to get another ride with somebody else." And at that point, she flipped out, told her kid, get out of the car. He dropped the phone, whatever. And she's yelling that she's going to fuck the car up and everything. And I'm thinking, well, if she does, then I will at least have evidence for an insurance claim here. So instead, I got the video that we're all witnessing and commenting on and yada yada. So I hope that provides a little more clarity to the situation, and appreciate you tuning in if that was what you were seeking out of this episode. So thank you. And at this point, I will be turning my focus to the Supreme Court and all of the shenanigans that they have been up to for the past 8 or so days. Before I get into all that, I would like to run down some of the history of the Supreme Court. It was formed as a result of the Judiciary Act of 1789, and at that point it had one Chief Justice and 5 additional justices. So there was a total of 6. And that number later grew with the Judiciary Act of 1869 to the number that we currently have today of 9. And as we all know, they have lifetime appointments, but they used to have to do what is referred to as ride circuit. And so they used to have to hold court in the districts that they came from on an annual basis. I'm assuming that this got them out of the capital and back in touch with the people and the things going on in their communities. That's my assumption there. So now I guess we'll get into a couple of the more famous rulings that they've had before we get into the current ones. So Dred Scott versus Sanford. So in that case, the wonderful Supreme Court ruled that the United States Constitution did not apply to people that came from the African continent. So that's one ruling. Another would be Korematsu versus the United States, where they decided that the internment of Japanese citizens or Japanese American citizens was legal and justifiable. It's not all bad. They were kind of on a roll in the 50s and 60s. There's the Brown versus Board of Education that obviously led to the desegregation of schools. There was Reynolds versus Sims. The result of that was that legislative districts were supposed to have an equal population so that the representatives were representing an equal number of people. There was also Griswold versus Connecticut, which established a right to privacy, which has since been shattered by a number of other acts, and a number of other rulings. But anybody that owns a smartphone these days knows that. And they also had a number of different cases that reduced the religious influence in schools. So some might consider that a bad thing. I put it in the good column. I'm not here to get into a debate about that. So, I mean, that's just, we can save that for another episode. Anyway, let's get into what's going on now, beginning with Roe v. Wade getting overturned on the 24th of June. For the record, I am recording on July 1st, 2022, and Roe v. Wade was overturned a week ago on the 24th. So this obviously repeals the federal rights to an abortion, and there's a lot of women up in arms about it, and I'm on their side. We've discussed abortion a number of times, why people have children. There's overpopulation issues. There's a whole bunch of reasons, but the long and the short of it is you can be pro-life in a pro-choice world. You can go ahead and continue to have all the babies that you want, but respect the people that think differently than you and allow them to proceed however they see fit for their lives. And I think the real crux of the argument is, where does life begin? So we might get into that into a future episode. But for now, back to the Supreme Court. Everybody's been up in arms over Roe v. Wade, and I think the Supreme Court knew exactly what they were doing, because when they reversed that, it got everybody's attention and distracted them from the number of other things they've done since then, including a ruling in the Oklahoma v. Castro Huerta case. So basically in 2020, the very same court, a couple different justices, ruled that large portions of Oklahoma were Native American land, giving it back to the Native Americans. And basically this ruling on Wednesday of this week says that the state can prosecute non-Native Americans who commit crimes on these lands. I think it might be crimes specifically against Native Americans, but this is overstepping the sovereignty and the legal system that the Native Americans already have in place on their lands. So this is a pretty significant ruling that could have some serious ramifications on Native Americans here moving forward. So they've already gone after women, they've gone after Native Americans, and why not just fuck the climate all in one week? So on June 30th, just yesterday, they ruled in the West Virginia v. United States EPA case, and basically said that the EPA has no right to monitor or regulate the emissions from any of these existing power plants. So basically just cutting off one, if not both of their nuts, maybe like 1.5 nuts. They left them half a nut. But That is as of yesterday. So Lord knows what they've got in store for next week. Happy Independence Day, motherfuckers. Jesus Christ. So how do we take care of any of this? I think the biggest thing is term limits. Safe and I have discussed this before, I believe, off air, but we may have discussed it on a previous episode. I don't know. There's too many at this point. Term limits are necessary for any government position. Anybody that gets stuck in a government position for too long will begin to lose touch with those that they represent. Simple as that. Times change. Think about it. There's justices that serve for 30 years or longer. 30 years ago, people didn't have smartphones. There weren't flat screen TVs. Electric cars? You fucking serious? Come on, people. Facebook? Huh? Y'all are kidding. Like, for real. Times, they be a-changing. So we need fresh blood in there on a consistent basis in order to represent the country that we're currently living in and not 1984 America. Oh, that was a clever pun, huh? Additionally, if we're just going to accept that we have a two-party system, then it would probably be advantageous to have an equal representation of both parties and perhaps an independent as well, since there's 9. So that way the court is never tilted in one direction. Well, that, and I believe that maybe having them resume circuit once or twice a year, so they can go back and actually rule on just a normal case and, practice being a judge and not just practice sitting in Washington, D.C., ruling on these super important cases about people that they have no idea about because they're still living in a different decade and they don't understand the culture or political climate or real climate that we currently live in. So I think that would be a nice change as well. There's a number of other welcome suggestions, and I invite you to leave a comment on this video and be sure to like and subscribe to the Catch the Sky podcast on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find me on Twitter at CTS Terry. I appreciate you listening to this brief episode. And until next week, as always, keep trying to catch the sky.